Well, here's the thing. They're asking for tax. They're saying that he is evading tax, but he hasn't sold any of the money that he raised. So does he really owe tax?
I agree. I completely agree. I think the Interpol case is.
So instead of like handing yourself into Interpol, wait it out. Get the SEC out the way, and then let your lawyers deal with that. That's
Has
what I
there
think.
been any case? Has there been any record of people being able to just wait it out though? Do you know what I mean? Like eventually the Interpol is going to catch up.
Well, I mean, there's people that are on the Interpol list that have been on there for like a decade. It's
May I give an example of somebody on the Interpol? This is why Interpol has such amazing credibility. In 2021, Iran issued and then renewed an arrest of Donald Trump. And,
That
that's
is
what
around though.
Yeah, but the point is that's Interpol. That's Interpol. They will take any piece of shit that comes their way. So that's number one.
they're also very corrupt.
They're listening right
course.
now, and normally, if you really care about Richard Hart, you would actually not say that he's in Cyprus. You don't go, he's in Cyprus.
He's bulletproof.
What a rat!
Point is, he's bulletproof.
Here's the other part of this.
He's got lawyers.
Yeah, he's got lawyers. Maddie's right.
Richie's with me right now, cooling by the beach. We're vibing.
I was
there's no
joking
problem.
because KR is in Cyprus.
Yeah, but here's the other point of this. Okay, number one, the fact that he would not spend the money right now is bullish. Not that he ever would anyway, but it's very bullish for Pulsechain because it means the OA is not going to go dump. Why in the hell would he go dump when he's got this case pending? Number two, I'm not going to say how, but I'll just say that I'm very certain that Richard has an awesome tax strategy. And there's no way, yeah, you guys are right, he hasn't spent the money. But even if he did, I believe there's a tax strategy behind that. And I'm not going to say any more. That's just all I'll say about that.
But we know he hasn't spent the money because the money's in the wallet where he bought it.
Exactly.
Well, apparently,
just
a little update. Okay, first of all, can you hear me? Okay, because I've got my headphones in. Does it sound okay?
Yeah, we can hear you nice.
All right, cool. So someone who is from Finland said, just messaged in the group and said, even if Richard hasn't sold any tokens while he was in Finland, our great government doesn't care. Every crypto to crypto transaction is taxable here.
Yeah. So my question is, imagine they're treating him like Ross Ulbricht, right? And so they want to be able to exact a plan where they get him and get his laptop open, and they can therefore pinpoint him to his open whatever. It's not the same as being on the dark web, but maybe he has open whatever. But imagine then if they so I've just had a look, they've got 142 million euro annual budget, assuming they put a large majority towards that because they know how much they can get out of Richard. Isn't that a bit of a concern for the people that are invested?
No, not at all. You know what you need to do, brother?
Yep.
You need to go watch Richard Hart's Christmas street video.
I did watch it.
Christmas video.
I did watch that. And
he planned every single thing in life. Everything that's gonna be coming is all been planned.
Do you not think?
I trust in the man.
Do you not think Ross Ulbricht thought he had everything covered?
Well, I mean, listen, Ross Ulbricht. You can't really compare the Ross Ulbricht case because it involved, illegal activities that were a lot more harsh than tax evasion, let's say. So I wouldn't compare it to Ross Ulbricht, but at the same time, I get your point. Like, yeah, that you're absolutely right. Like, if they think that they can get a massive amount of money out of him, they might deploy as much energy as they can to try and find him.
Yeah,
but
the argument I've heard against it is, or for it, I should say, is that Finland is currently in an economical crisis.
Correct.
And they need the money. Therefore, they would probably allocate a large proportion of their budget towards catching this person, so they can extract as much money out of this person as they can in not non-paid taxes.
So here's the thing.
Hi guys, I'm living in Finland, and Finland just sent 1.2 billion to Ukraine, so the crisis is fabricated.
Yeah. So when it comes to what you just said, like if I was somebody, aka Richard Hart, and there was a government trying to extort me for money, I would go somewhere, which he probably already is right now, that doesn't have any extradition laws, and I would just stay there, and I would sit on the Interpol red notice for the rest of my life. That's
Yeah.
probably what he's going to do.
Do we know which
So
countries?
famous just had a good he just done some research on it. And famous, you want to quickly say what you just DM'd me, bro?
Yeah, so basically at the end of the day, like the law doesn't give a shit about how we feel, nor are none of us lawyers right now, but we can do the research to look at the jurisprudence of this type of situation. So what they could do technically, right, is there is enough visible evidence, in my opinion, that he is technically coercing the ability to receive donations, right? Even though that it's not doing a security, he's not trading it for something, blah 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 blah. There's still an act, and they have to judge it. Whereas you still receive technically $1.2 billion. And what I think is that there was a business in Finland registered under Brett Morrissey and Richard Hart called the Hex Fortress. And they would technically have the suspicions to say, listen, you live here, you have tax duties here. We believe that you
That wasn't in
received
Finland, bro.
Yeah, that the Hex Fortress was in Finland.
It was in Estonia.
Yeah, that was
But
Estonia.
but there's also a piece of it in Finland that they dissolved. They first did it. They did something and then they dissolved it also. It's probably like when they started it, they tried that. Like I understand, there's also one in Sweden.
So
If you
they
go
have
look at it.
like a limited company in Finland as well, or
Yes, because there is traces. If they believe that he did receive that and he has ties to that, then he's technically like
yeah.
there has
If
to be
you,
traces, right? But he also the only like someone like let me just say like someone can't say that like none of us can get in trouble if we never had ties anywhere, right? So there has to be legally ties. Like all of us, we don't know, but I'm saying like regardless, the 1.2 billion could be considered donations, and donations in Finland are taxable. So that's why they're going after it.
Well,
there we
we
go.
If
have
that's the case, but I don't
44,000.
even think,
We
but
have
I don't
we
even
have
think it's because of that. I don't even think it's because of that, because technically in Europe, every European has years to file their tax returns, and we can't get in trouble for something that we technically still have the rights to do something to claim our innocence. All they could do is say, listen, you owe this, and you have to do this, or else you're getting fined. Then after the fine, they take more precautions. In this game for over 10 years, it could just be because he didn't pay taxes on Bitcoin or Ethereum.
Considering
It doesn't
you
even
know
have to be with what we're thinking. It could just be as basic as look. And I
yeah,
don't want
but
to say this but I'm pretty sure most people in here might get into trouble if the taxes were done audited, right? Like a lot of people owe taxes to the government because of crypto. So it could be because of anything. It could be because
well
of the
let
Bitcoin
me
trades that he made. It could have been because of anything. What
if I
ties
could.
did he have in the past to Finland, right? There has to be a reason. I just can't randomly get Jamaica to come and sue me for, oh, you owe us taxes. For what? When was I in Jamaica?
yeah,
If I
Right?
could
So
push
like,
back on this for just a minute, when we donate, we sacrificed so that our names would appear on the record for the First and Second
yeah,
Amendment.
yeah,
And then we found
but
out
that's okay.
further,
Regardless, that has to still go in court, and they have to
I
fight
agree.
about that
And
because
that's exactly what happened in the US. I agree.
but
Now, what we
but
found out
The
was,
idea is what's Finland, right? We have to find the ties to Finland because, like I said, if I have no tax number anywhere, if I don't have any ties to that area,
Mhm.
how could that individual say that you owe there? It makes no sense. They can't sue me as a Canadian. Like Portugal can't sue me as a Canadian because I owe taxes in Canada. No, it's because you as a Canadian have something in Portugal to tax
So
here, and
famous.
so
then you have to get that.
the question is, does Finland have jurisdiction over the sacrificer's money? Now, that question came up in court, and that's one of the reasons that Carol Bagliamone dismissed the case, and here's why. At the sort of level where we have evidence waiting, had this thing gone to trial, we would have found that 44,500 people, more than half of them were not U.S. citizens. And as a matter of fact, the SEC was laying claim to that, saying that this was, in essence, Richard. So that was
No, I understand
Well,
that,
but
Danny.
what Famous is
That I
saying,
understand.
it doesn't have
All
to
I'm
be
saying is that
associated with the
what
fact.
ties does he have to
Yeah.
Finland?
we
What
don't know.
ties is it? Because then you have to go deeper than what he did. It's what it is, right? Like I'm explaining. like in order for Finland to strictly get him, right, there has to be a tie, even if he's
So
a
in the
European.
United Kingdom, so look, hear me out. In the United Kingdom, if you're not a citizen of the UK, but you live in the UK and you've made money, which is basically you could be making money overseas, but you live in the UK and that money has come to you in the UK, then you have to pay taxes to the UK.
It's based on
Whether
a,
that's the same thing in Finland.
But then you have to understand what is his ties, because same thing, right? You can't get a bank account if you don't have ties to England. So just like myself, like I'm Italian. If I'm in Portugal, I can't just come in and say, yes, as an Italian, I'm doing this. No, no, no. I have the rights because I'm Italian, but I have to technically become a Portuguese. And I'm pretty sure Finland, which is in the same kind of model of what I have to live with, and I'm pretty sure DMF can say so because he lives there. They have a system where you have to tie yourself to that system. So then how did Richard tie himself to that system? Because it could be anything. Like you were saying, like what was he doing? How was the sacrifice played? How were individuals, was the way that he maybe had his hosting set up, like, you know what I mean? Like
didn't
there
you say
has
he
to
was,
be.
Hey, famous.
didn't
I
you,
could add actually to that. Like, we could also research the other side. Who's searching for him? Interpol is actually a little bit famous about doing some contract work. You know, not only the lawful stuff, but some political type of hunting, just like what happened to Julian Assange and the
mercenary?
Swedish thing. So we have to also see that side. I know it's a theory, a conspiracy theory, put the tinfoil hat, but it's actually a thing that is viable also to research.
And
Didn't
there's
you
Yeah, but
say,
something
how
else
come?
we're not
But how come
considering,
he's
which
not
is
getting? How?
imagine that Richard has a tax-free status that is awarded to an entity that he owns, and I can think of several that he used. Then that money, if that's where the sacrifice money went, assuming it was, then that is also tax exempt. And my guess is that's what happened.
didn't you say he had a limited company in Finland though?
Estonia.
But it has to be deeper than that because it's the why would it be him? Like
Well,
at the end of the day, tax. Like this is what I found interesting too. It's not like he's. It's like it's tax fraud. Okay, I get it. So now it's not that he took the car and smashed a car into a building. It's not that he robbed someone at gunpoint. It's not that he did a Ponzi scheme. It's not that he did a check fraud. It's that he did tax fraud. So that means that he has tax involvement with it. So then we would have to dig in, and obviously I don't know how far we could dig in on this, but if it's a tax problem, then there's tax involvement. There's an issue with his taxes. And if we go back in time, someone would have to look at the time schedule, the chronological order of things, and say, well, they could still come back I don't know how long is it in Finland, DMF, but you have the duty to do something up to a certain point, but then they can come up to you, back to you for a certain point. So it could
Yeah,
be
you
for
have 5
any
years to
reason.
declare your things. So
So imagine that's 5 years. So that technically he can't get in trouble for not paying taxes fraud wise
what was,
because
but you don't know
also
what
the
he owned
tax.
before, you know? Like,
Also, another person, a
you
lawyer,
have
told me
this
that when it's like aggravated tax
famous.
fraud, it means that you're in trouble for what you actually claimed. So that means that he didn't claim properly. So maybe he just didn't claim properly because there's rights to things. There's like, no, I don't have to pay taxes on this, type stuff. But that what I'm interested in, very concerned, is like, well, what's his tax involvement in Finland?
do we have a
If,
figure?
like we said,
Like a
Well, if
figure
he
that he is
had to
owing?
own some,
aggravated tax fraud is
if
for
he
a
had
lot of money,
if he had to
a lot of
own
money.
something, he had to have social security number. That basically it's his
Exactly.
ID number.
Well, it's the only way to
So
get
if
tax
he
involvement.
owned something in Finland, he has to have that ID. But besides that, he can have a temporarily one if he isn't already European in other passports. Because utilizing the Schengen laws, you can go through
But you
every
still need to get
country
a
like
tax
a
number.
state.
Yeah, but you still
Yes,
need
you
to get a
do
tax
if
number.
you
Want to
have a
own something.
business or you want to live longer than 3 months, if I remember right.
Is Finland part of the Schengen zone? I didn't think it was.
Yes, it is.
Oh,
This is
okay.
No,
why
but
we've
so
also
he
suffered
lived
the
there.
invasion of migrants also to here.
I
No,
would
you
ask
see,
Oh,
you
right.
guys.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I would ask you guys to follow the timeline. So here's the timeline. So the SEC goes in front of Judge Carol Bagley-Amon. She indicates, or she signals, that the SEC is full of shit and they're about to lose. And for all the years that Richard was allegedly living in Finland, he was in the same tax situation, nothing, until the SEC knows that they're going to take a horrible fall. And then they call their buddies over at the Interpole, same folks that put out the warrant for the arrest of Donald Trump as president by Iran, those guys, and they said, listen, we can't do much on our end. We're about to lose his case. Could you shake his cage a little bit? That's number one. Number two, if he has some form of tax zero entity, let's say, for example, and I don't think it is this, so I'm going to use this example, but maybe something not too far off of this. Let's say you have a tax deferred Roth IRA that you put a small donation into, and they allow you, I think, 7,000 a year. So Richard put 7,000 in one time, so the thing exists, and then he uses that thing for the good of people, for freedom of speech and and so forth. That is not actually him legally, and that is an entity which exists in the U.S. which is not subject to taxes. And that could easily be it. So I'll just, but I don't think it is that, by the way, but something like that.
Yeah, but how does that make sense how does that make sense that Finland is tax wise? Why isn't the US?
Famous is making a good point here. We don't really know what is it. We know he's wanted by Finland, but like it's all it says is fraud, including
including affecting the
interest
financial
of European
interests.
communities within the meaning of the Convention of 26 July 1995 on the protection of European communities' financial interests. Does that mean that it's tax in Finland, or could it be another country in Europe?
That is very true.
Well,
I'm asking
as you see now, we have to go into what it is. So
ChatGPT
that means
now.
if he was living there, then it could be anywhere in Europe that's trying to get him, and that the way that has to work is because no, he lived with you. Because sometimes too, people are gonna say like, no, wait, this is you. You gotta go do that. You gotta go spend the money and get him. Not me. I'm not gonna do that. My taxpayers are not gonna pay for that. When he lived in your area, when he lived on your soil, when he was living in your stuff, and he
So look, I've
scammed
just
everyone in
asked.
Europe, then it's your problem,
So
not
I
mine.
just
To like mesh both worlds into like whatever. But what I think is a problem, right, is the fact that if you don't know who you're getting money from and you're an entity, whether it's personally or if it's your business, if you don't have the ability to prove how you receive your funds, how you make your funds, how are you doing this? How are you making this money? Are you receiving cash? Is it a wire? You're receiving it to a bank? How are you doing this, right? So it always, in my opinion, breaks down into, okay, he gets his money into a bank account, and that bank account receives it from a method. And that method says, well, these are what our individuals do, and this is the client's profile, and blah, blah, blah. And then they search and they say cryptocurrency. And then they're like, okay, well, then when they approach him and say, how did you get these funds? He's at the end of the day, most individuals in crypto say, well, I don't know who's this wallet that I got it from. If I did the NFT sale, or if I, because of the decentralization aspect. So that's where it gets into problem, and they can say, oh, but wait a minute, you're doing wrong because you're handling our money in ways that endangers the civilians. So you can get in trouble in court because you don't do your due diligence to make sure that the money that you have is AML correct. It's not dirty. It doesn't come from organized terroristic groups. And then when obviously not many people have this experience, but when you're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars, especially in crypto, there is a certain flag on you where, I'm pretty sure, they start looking at where all the funds come from.
So considering, like, is there an amount public that he is owing? And second question, I guess, is if that information is public, could he anonymously, or I suppose not anonymously, but send that money to, and what would happen to the Interpol list if Finland suddenly received, $40 million?
You see, so
Like,
I understand a bit too, because I have two citizenships. So if I were to ever get in trouble, because tax is a international problem, so that means that everyone's able to come after you when it comes to income and tax. So if I were to just make all this money and I didn't claim taxes in Portugal and I didn't claim taxes in Canada, both of them would be able to come after me, or Italy would come after me, actually. Dude, to me, what's really interesting about this is that this confirms that he's a billionaire. because you wouldn't have you if he was only a couple millions of dollars, you don't get aggravated tax fraud.
But how does this come to an end? Do you know what I mean? Like, so, like
I
the
think he's
reason
fighting
I
for the
raise this
rights. Like,
question.
imagine they're going after him for the past. It's he serves as an example. Then imagine he wins with that too. Technically, he helps everybody. Everybody, like you and me and any panos and everybody that's been in crypto for years. Are they going to be able to come back after me for 12 years ago just because it's something that they decided? Oh no, but
But
cryptocurrency is not
that's the whole
dollars, you
thing
know?
with blockchain, right? Like
Yeah.
everything is on a ledger. Everything is
It's actually traceable.
I just
publicly.
don't
Guys, this is the
Everything
best
from
point.
Bitcoin, to everything's traceable now. The Ethereum
I
open
This
just
is
I
the
network,
just
they
best
say
did their
point.
block
Look,
zero, so like
Has
everything's
he ever
traceable.
interacted with a Tornado Cash or a Monero
yes.
or anything that
Yes.
is?
Exactly. You know, those
Yes.
are issues too at the time.
but here, remember, Tornado Cash is now legal. Number one. Number
No,
two,
but it's the
this is the
intention.
best.
It's the intention, so you can assume things,
Sure,
right? The
fair
intentions.
enough.
It's not
I agree.
necessarily about saying like we have to really dig as like problems because right now it's not like he's in the UK and they're saying it's guilty as charged and you have to
Okay.
prove yourself innocent.
Well,
He
I'm
is
agreeing
innocent.
with you, and I'm going to put an "and" in that
Yes.
sentence. And the reason that I was kind of almost hoping that Richard's case would have gone to court, he had the best lawyers by all definition in the whole world. They're very selective about who they take. This guy has an iron-proof, bulletproof defense. Now, imagine I'm Richard. Years ago, I allegedly became, if not a billionaire, very close on just. I don't know, Bitcoin. And so I convert, I don't know, maybe just 100 million of that to USDC. I can now sit, for example, in a decentralized wallet, as long as I have a Coinbase wallet hooked up to it in some fashion. And decentralized, I can earn 4.1% on that, which is what? Some ridiculous amount of money that I owe no tax on if I am based in Puerto Rico, for example. Now, I'm not
It's
saying
fully
Richard's in
feasible,
Puerto
brother.
Rico, but I'm saying there's plenty of tax advantage ways that Richard did set up his thing. I can't tell you guys a lot about that because, well, I just can't, but I can tell you I'm extremely certain that Richard set things up very, very well from a tax standpoint.
I don't think he did. I think
I'm
he took a
positive
bunch of
he
money
did.
in wallets that he
I'm
assumed no one would associate with him.
what now?
I don't think that's the case at all. I think he just took a bunch of money in a bunch of wallets that he unlinked from his personal matters, and then Tornado cashed it,
I agree.
money into his real wallets when he
I don't know
needed.
why you think that.
Because we can see it on chain that's exactly what he did.
Right.
Yeah, but you don't know what entity controlled that money. That's the thing. So, for
What
example, I have
entity?
I have some crypto in a tax deferred Roth IRA wallet from back when I lived in the continental U.S. as a U.S. citizen. I'm still a U.S. citizen. Now I live in Puerto Rico. That created a second entity that can take tax free capital gains and can also take tax free interest. But when I was in the U.S., in addition to money that I paid taxes on, I also had money in Roth IRAs. So a Roth IRA, not multiple, but that was just one thing. And I believe Richard's entity is not even a Roth IRA. I think it's something better. Even in this country, number one, number two, that did not belong to him. Because once you sacrificed, you left an indelible fingerprint on the blockchain saying this was for the Pulsex or Pulsex sacrifice. It
Doesn't
was
matter.
kind of like the
Yeah,
Mount
it doesn't matter.
Rushmore of
Doesn't
crypto.
matter.
It is on
Doesn't
chain
matter.
forever.
It's a
If you
free
were
sale.
if you were to like interact with that from Finland, I'm pretty sure they'd be able to see you transferring crypto or anything like this.
Yeah, they don't recognize sacrifice as what we believe it to be.
Right. But the point is, I'm a U.S. citizen. My money was sacrificed here in Puerto Rico. No, you do not have domain over those proceeds. I'm sorry if government of Finland, any more than the SEC had the right to say that these things were not what they were. They actually sued the software. And everybody would have said at the time, oh, it's the SEC. They must know something. Well, there you go.
Yeah, but how about why don't we just assume that, let's say I'm telling you all to give me money and I have my address stapled to my forehead and I'm advertising it to every single person on every single corner of the internet. And my current home address where I live and reside is in Finland. Why doesn't Finland have the right to go after me?
Of course
Depends
he
the
does.
Yeah.
entity that you're using. Do
No, no,
you
no. But
benefit personally from it?
but it depends also. It depends also. It depends also. How did he? What's the dates, right? When was he in Finland, right? Okay, and then you go and say it could have been anything because you have to think Richard understands exchanges. He got fucked by exchanges, right?
Look,
He's
I
But
already.
understand
but
all that.
No,
he
no, I know,
lives
no. But
in
wait.
Finland, So he has to have expenses. Ethereum is probably going to hit $7,000-8,000. Pulsechain is probably going to lag behind, and it's probably a bit like 50%, probably less than. But it's going to be like you pump Bitcoin to $100,000, and then half of that is going to see the top, and they're going to extract, and they're going to put it into the next shitcoin. And they're going to pump that to the top, and they're going to pump that to the top, and they're going to Bitcoin extract, and they're going to put it to the next thing down, and they're going to pump that up to the top, and they're going to take as much extract from the top as that they can, and they're going to move it along to the next thing. Because whoever is max extracted from Bitcoin, I honestly don't believe they are legitimate actors. I know you've got micro strategies. I know you've got blah, 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 blah. There's people back in 2012 who made millions from Bitcoin, not through legitimate means.
It really is a big push, but if this system can work to where we have some kind of an arc of economic activity to buffer any major catastrophes in the traditional banking and finance system, that right there is going to be worth everything. And so I'd say give it a little more time. The whole thing with pdai and all that hasn't played out yet. So I think people just need to be a little more reserved in their opinions about it. They need to be watchful, and it's a great time to learn. And Richard made it pretty clear, the 4 coins that are the core coins, period. He's also given some guidance in relation to understanding the systems that are on Pulsechain. And there's a lot of people, as has been proven, including me, with this last setup here, that we don't even know how to work the systems that are available to us. So the big narrative right now, I believe, should be is instead of being at each other's throats and chasing after shiny things, is looking at the ecosystem that we have and that's been built for us and finding the hidden gems that are within it to the best that we can. So that's all I have to say.
When it comes to bonuses, those high yields come. That 40% APY came because only 10% of the holders of Hex were staked.
Okay, so the OA is the one that staked all the coins, and that's what made the yield go down because there's a bunch staked compared to not being staked.
Correct.
Okay.
And even though we know the OA doesn't really sell as Hex, right? So we don't really count them as circulating supply. But technically, I guess they, in theory, they are circulating supply, right? I mean, him staking it showed it. They are circulating.
Now, does that put a cap on people holding coins? Does that move up like a dolphin position or a shark position because there's less circulation?
I believe those are ranks based on your T-share quantity, right? So just
okay.
Yeah, the more T-shares you have in the system, the higher you move up throughout that specific league, if you will.
Okay, because I thought there was a theory behind that. There was less circulation, so that means people who held more would move up in that position. But maybe that's why I was asking. I didn't really know for sure.
Yeah, I got so disappointed when the staker app basically, I don't even know the drama really behind it other than it's non-usable now, and it's like, well, that sucks because that was a fun onboarding tool. It's like, yeah, Hex is Hex. I still love it though. It's my baby.
Is that the only thing you own on Pulsechain? Or are you just a Hex maxi?
All Richard Hart core coins. I own some pump tires.
Pump tires is pretty cool, man. I made some good money off of that little gig that when he kicked those out of there.
Yeah, I'm not a really meme guy. I know this is a degenerate place. I'm not much of a meme guy.
I've been degen in too much lately. I ran out of dry powder because when we had that last kind of good dip, I thought, wow, maybe we might hit the bottom right there, and then now look where we're at. So I ended up buying some ink and some PLSX.
You're telling me. I bought the top on Friday. I already know. I should know better. Well, either am I, but just from experience, you should know Sundays are usually really good days to buy. The market's usually been bleeding all weekend. So Sundays are really good. You usually get good price on Sundays.
It seems like Sundays, Monday you get a slight pump, and then Tuesday seems to dump. From what I've been noticing, but lately it hasn't been like that. It just seems like every day dumps.
Yeah, I bought Hex this week, and I was looking at the daily, and I saw what was uncertainty in the candle, and of course the next day, I bought, and it was the top of Hex that day. It's like, yeah, go figure. Oh well, whatever.
Everybody's kind of like, oh, everybody's pointing the finger when you really need to do is point the finger back at yourself, because that's what you want to do is hold whatever coin you want to hold it. You don't got to talk shit to anybody or point the finger. And that's the thing about it, though. And that's just human nature, though. Everybody wants to be right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so there's some ego involved, but then, being a Hexagon, and so, hey, Maddie's here, so Maddie can attest to this, is, like we like to make sure people don't get scammed, right? Hexagons are a unique breed, even though maybe some can argue otherwise lately, but we always are very vocal about people getting scammed, and we try to prevent that, or at least from the Hexagons I follow. I know I can't say all Hexagons. That's very broad brush to paint, but I think that's where a lot of the arguing and bickering comes from is people, some ego, but then people really just trying to be good human beings for the most part.
Yeah.
I like to think so, at least.
Yeah, I think so too, man. I think, and some people just get taken wrong, because when you can't hear somebody type out what they type out, the emotion, people are emotional and they read it, and then it's all of a sudden how they interpret it.
Because no matter how he tweets, people can read it funny. But if you look at his facial expressions as he's saying, hey, don't do this stupid thing, you're going to take him a lot more serious than if you just read it over his Twitter.
Absolutely. It leaves a lot of open gaps, right? So I agree with you there. And you know what? I've never got the chance to watch him live stream or do anything like that. A lot of people are like,
oh, you are missing out.
Yeah, a lot of people say that all the time. They're like, yeah, you're missing out, man. He was like, it's a pretty cool thing to experience. So hopefully, maybe.
They're not too dated either. Like, some of the topics are a little dated, but the knowledge is still there. You could still learn a lot about what's happened, how the industry has evolved throughout the years. Like, I go back and watch old streams all the time.
Similar to the Hex story, it's cherry picking, right? So you had the AA, and the AA had a price which was 20,000 ETH on the day one, and then the price crashed down, and then from then on, Richard seems to, at least historically, have pointed to 10,000x for Hex because it was the all-time low to the all-time high. And so basing on that and having these braggadocious points as counters to any trolling or any community battering or player versus player history and things like that since Pulsechain and Pulsex launched. I was just trying to figure out what are advertising points, and advertising points potentially would be 10,000x. Where would 10,000x come from?
Yep.
Whether it's community destruction, SEC disappearance from streaming, price moving around as far as OA up and down, speculation, buying charts, whatever. So like a capitulation kind of thing in addition would be the OA's never sold a coin. Well, he sold something because he had something to buy, or some OA did. Address had something to buy the chart, a PLS and PLSX and Hex in the past, right? We see those movements. So negative things going down 85% from here is potential to give for both PLS and PLSX a 10,000x from 85% down from here is a 250x for people that never ever moved a coin. 250x, and that's kind of consistent with L1 narrative about a new launch of an L1, just as far as advertising. Now that discounts the battered spouse, this bloody and bruised. It says things worked out because we had a kid and had utopia later. But that's part of what Richard has done historically, at least as far as his own coin, is point at the all-time low to the all-time high and say, look, if you stayed in Hex and it migrated over to Pulsechain, then on the second cycle, it went 100,000x from all-time low, from its all-time low. So 100,000x on Hex. That's just, again, with the destruction as part of the making the low point. I don't know what does that. Is there anybody big enough? Like Rackham selling has had certain prices. Other whales have had certain prices. But how long do they stay? Because the $1,000 guy, the sacrifice for PLS or PLSX, has to ride it down and sit there at $2.50, and then has to also not sell as they recover, if it recovers, to go above their sacrifice price beyond that to be worth $250,000. You see what I'm saying?
So okay,
So
I get it. So you from sacrifice price, you're saying
by going by this math, it's a 250x.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you looked at the chart in history and said, "Here's how it actually played out," we can make all our speculation about what the future will be. We don't know that Richard goes to jail. Have been moving the coins that we thought that the OA was controlled by Richard, and it confirms that it's different people. If the Twitter is confirmed that it's not Richard that's been tweeting all along, and it becomes a psyop question about like where the information feed has come along, there's all kinds of things that can destroy the chart further.
Right.
And so destroying the chart actually sets up potentially for a braggadocious kind of, hey, at 10,000x from the bottom on one cycle, one Bitcoin cycle. And the positive would be if you sacrificed your $1,000 back in the origin of the sacrifice story, and you had on paper at least a $250,000 price for your $1,000. That's 250x above SAC. But that also means that you had to round trip all the way down and all the way back up to even if the liquidity is there for you to exit out of paper. So what I'm saying is chart, and what he has done, what others and historically hexagons, people that don't like hexagons, Pulsechain, Pulsex, it ends up being. Look at the chart, bro. The chart, bro, says the bottom was here, the top was here. Only a certain people were able to sell at the top. Only a certain people were there to sell at the bottom, and it just becomes like, does the $1,000 guy wait till it's worth $2.50, or did he sell before? And even if he is down there holding coins, does he ride it back up past 300, 400, 500 to get to his origin story 5 years later, his origin point, and then hold beyond that? So it's the same for Hex. It's the same for Pulsechain. It's the same for Pulsex. Hex has the potential to be 100,000x. And is that advertising? Who knows? Like, we don't know where the future.
Probably want it to go down another 85% from here, so he can say that it done a 10,000x if it does that, right? And yeah, I mean, it'd be a lot of pain at that point, but it's definitely possible for an 85% drop from here.
Well, what I was saying also is, the $1,000 clip for SAC was what people were pointing at and saying that was the majority of sacrificers, like 55 or 60% of people that sacrificed $1,000 worth of their crypto, whatever their crypto was, and then that got exited, become into stablecoin and all that history. So like the advertising of the second cycle of RH products or whatever is either going to be shouldered and bragged on because of Richard and Richard doing it, or people that have been in this cycle for 8 years, 9 years, or whatever the time plays out, doing the same sort of thing, and saying, no, look at the chart, bro. You can get the altcoin daily guys, the Ivan on Tech guys, to go to the chart, and then the chart shows what the price has been. Doesn't maybe that means that liquidity for these things goes down to $20. That all the liquidity is pulled, and there's also massive FUD storm. Richard got arrested. Richard beat up a 16-year-old. Like, all those kinds of stories play out, whether they're true or not. But basically, that becomes a thing that people just don't want to be associated whatsoever to 250x sacrifice price when nobody is here, when nobody wants to return, when there's a massive stall out of even like, hey, it's kind of coming back up to sacrifice price, because if it comes up close to sacrifice price but nobody has their coins, they already sold them, then they're either going to FOMO and say, wait a minute, it might actually go up. And then they decide, or they're going to participate and potentially go through the PTSD of it crashing again. Like, that's the story is, does it destroy down 85% from here, from today, more, or even more, but go down further to give that original, that narrative that, hey, if you stayed in all along, you made 250x. If you got in at the bottom, you made 10,000x. If you got in at the bottom of Hex origin story back in 2020 or whatever it was, 6 years later, 7 years later, you made 100,000x on your money. Like, those things are just the marketing tools available to either Richard or anybody that decides to kind of promote that.
Well, that's definitely shaking out some weak hands, right? Holy shit! If it went down another 85%.
Yeah, like Gary said, like at that point there'd be so little liquidity and so many people would exit. It'd be a lot easier to push the price up.
Well, again, the resistance is, and it makes sense because the people are responding to the thread, which is true. The resistance is oh yeah, but as the price comes up, then people will, be, there'll be a ceiling or there'll be sell pressure because the price is coming up. Yeah, but that assumes that people are here. Like that assumes that people are still having spaces that have 500 participants, listening into the most recent pdai thing or whatever's going on in 6 months. So like who is here and who still has coins are the only ones that can sell. And it's an interesting thing because Richard does cherry pick. He cherry picks, it wasn't from the launch and he maybe built it as a caveat about the AA. Hey guys, there's going to be twice as much hex available on day one. There's going to be 1 billion hex available. But like if you look at the EOS chart, participating on day one did not give you more EOS. So he pointed out that stuff in streams and he was, praised over it. But still, people that started on AA day one, 20,000 ETH went in supposedly that day. And, the next days after was a far, far less. So if you looked at your price, you would say, wow, the start was you got destroyed and you have that big collapse just like in most projects when they launch. And then you basically set a bottom whenever the bottom gets there. And in this case for Hex, it was 0.000056 or whatever to give a 10,000 X at 55 cents or 56 cents. This whole story about 555 and so forth. It can be other wallets that are controlled by the OA or derivatives or RH derivatives. It doesn't have to be anybody that says, I'm willing to sell my $1,000 sacrifice for $2. It doesn't have to be the guy. You can make the chart just by making the chart. Richard has said in the past, at least his tweets have said, he's talking about something else. I think he's talking about Bitcoin or something like that back in the day. But some of his tweets are, you can make the bottom can be made. You can make the bottom. It just ends up being expensive. Something like that is what he said. Like you can make the bottom. And I think that the OA, Richard, Rackham, Bretep, whomever wants to basically sell down the price, whoever's moving around, even the Vietnamese guy. Basically, if it goes down 85%, 86%, something like that, then it goes up 10,000x from that point, then it becomes $5.40 or whatever.
Damn.
Holy shit.
Eric Wall has confirmed that he is getting sandwiches for Richard in their secret hiding place. And so Richard is not dead. But I agree with Gary that anything can happen, all that.
Yeah, I mean, what would the price chart do across all of the believers and non-believers? How much trolling and commentary would happen
Well,
if
I would
it was confirmed that Eric is the OA and always has been?
mind blown. That's crazy. Yeah, I would I
Well,
would I would blame Eric Wall if anything. Be like, well, here's what we think happened. But I'll tell you, for me, I don't remember how many zeros there were when I was buying Hex at first. But then a lot of that got time locked and some of it, got sold along the way. On my first 100x ever in my life. And then when I started streaming on Tuesday nights, that was at a third of a penny, and we've streamed every Tuesday since then through the run up. And I can tell you a lot of for me, I probably sold a lot at a quarter because that was already almost another 100x. So
Yeah,
yeah.
even if you acquire, if things go down 85% from here, and then you acquire, let's say you throw $500 and you say, well, I'm willing to throw 500 or even $50. Are you going to go out at 1,000x because your $50 becomes $50,000, right? So there's the trauma side, the PTSD side, the I don't want to round trip again side of all of the price climbs, and people exit out, at 3x, 5x, 50x. It depends, right? And even when they say, which B Roots and others say constantly, oh, I'm holding a moon bag. Yeah, your moon bag. All right, you sell 80%, you hold 20%. Now that gets closer to your idea of a target. Like the things that ends up being magnets, as far as I understand, and I'm not a TA guy at all, is like, oh, this is like it's close to a penny, it's close to 10 cents, it's close to 5 cents. Like these fiat expressions of value, and you say, look, that's a magnet. It's pulling the chart up to this point or down to that point. That's part of the TA side, right? Sentiment of where that might land.